Hi, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager. Today I have special guest host Brian Hart here with me. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think the
It
last
has.
time you were on was probably Sundance episode over a year ago now.
Yeah,
So,
that was
not
for
much has happened in
Sundance.
that time.
Yeah. Yeah. No
It's been,
Sundance. That was
yeah,
one of the things.
yeah,
Or
there's no,
not the same way, I guess. They still have
yeah,
it.
no Sundance for you in 2021, but we had you on, I think, for spring of 2020. I think that was probably one of the last big events you did before the pandemic shut everything down. So,
Yeah, I remember
so
hearing about it at Sundance, but it was that still disconnected. Oh, there's something going on over there. That sounds like that would suck.
yeah,
And yeah.
little did you know, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, glad to have you back on the show. For longtime viewers of the show, they'll recognize that Brian has been with us for a while. He's our regular Sundance Film Festival correspondent and a longtime friend in general. So, welcome again. This time, we decided just to, I think this is sort of random movies that we just picked to review.
Yeah.
There's no theme. There's no theme here at all, actually. So, I'm going to just jump off with my first film that I picked to review, which is The Disciple. This is a film about a musician who devotes his life to becoming an Indian classical music vocalist, but begins to have doubts as he struggles to find success. The film is it was a huge critical hit and won the Critics' Prize at the Venice Film Festival, one of the only films from India to ever do so, and then was picked up by Netflix and promptly shoved into obscurity. And I started reading on different blogs and podcasts about this, or hearing about it on podcasts from different film critics that were raving about this film. So I suggested to Brian that we review it. The movie is a little bit slow going, and it's definitely a methodical look at a musician. What I really liked about it is that it really focuses on a musician who is on the fringes, right? So he's not even in a popular genre, much less being popular within that genre. And this particular character, what's interesting about him is he's approaching this very much from a technical point of view. He is practicing, he's trying to get better, he's working really hard, but for whatever reason, whether it's a spiritual reason, whether he just doesn't have the innate talent, or it's just not coming together for him. And we see that as things start to he starts to become increasingly frustrated with the lack of success that he's having. There's also this element that's told in flashbacks of the fact that his father was a music enthusiast who was also a failed musician and who put a lot of pressure on his son to succeed. So I'm curious to see hear what you had to say about the movie, Brian.
Yeah, so I am so glad. This was kind of a last minute swap, too. So we were going to
Yeah.
watch a different movie, and I'm really glad you swapped this one in because I haven't seen it. I saw the other one, which was also a good movie, but yeah, I didn't know what to expect. And uh, I really liked it. The cinematography in this movie is unbelievably good. And so, yeah, it does have that slower pace that's going to maybe not go over as well for some people, but I loved it. It was very hypnotic. And even the way, just that first shot where he's watching his mentor teacher sing and there's hardly any dialogue, but it kind of is like this slow pan. And I mean, it sets up the tone of the entire movie and kind of his
Mhm.
infatuation with his teacher without any dialogue. I mean, it was just, but you knew exactly what you were in for and what was going to happen and how he basically almost worshipped his teacher.
Right.
To set that up, with no words was just beautiful. And from then on, it was just a beautiful film to watch for sure.
Sorry, my cat, in
Got
case
a
people
little.
thought I don't have a tail, but I do have a kitty who is trying to get attention on the show. So the
Little
tail
guest
just flopped into
appearance. I
the
love it.
camera. That guest appearance by Libby. Yeah, no, I also love that. And the person who plays his mentor is just fantastic.
Yeah.
And, but you also see his mentor, unlike him, I think, we see that he's obviously a very gifted and amazing musician and
Right.
singer. And we see him living, especially towards the end of his life, in pretty much poverty, and so we see that it's not, talent doesn't equate as success, and
Hmm.
we're seeing that through the eyes of this character. One of my favorite scenes in the movie, and I actually audibly gasped, is he gets together with a friend of his to meet this, a very revered film. I was about to say film critic, music critic in
Hmm.
Mumbai, who he really admires, who knows a lot of the ins and outs of the classical music scene. And the critic tells him some harsh things that he doesn't really want to hear or is not prepared to hear about some of his idols. And he does something that was, it's a really simple gesture in a way in an action movie you wouldn't, but I actually audibly gasped when I was watching it because I
Mm.
didn't see it, because up until then this character, he's so kind of stoic, he doesn't
Yeah,
react
very
a lot to the,
passive.
yeah,
Yeah,
very passive character. And so, but in a way, you had someone who's sitting there telling him harsh truths and kind of breaking his idols down, and
yeah,
so, and he realized this is what he's devoted his life to, is these
yeah,
ideas and putting these folks up on these pedestals, and to find out maybe they weren't as perfect as he's thought, or they're not as amazing as he thought, is not what he wants to hear. So, it's
yeah.
really
And I love how
interesting.
it. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, just how that scene builds up. Like he's like, and one guy, because one guy's kind of like, I don't know, maybe we should not talk about this. And he's like, no,
Right.
no, I really want to hear the truth. This is good for me. And then, yeah, don't
He didn't
be
really
careful
want
what
to
you
hear
ask
the
for.
truth. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Be careful what you ask for. Exactly. Yeah, he keeps prompting him. Yeah, no, tell me more. I really
Yeah.
want to hear this. Yeah, and I think it was really interesting that Alfonso Cuarón, very,
Hmm.
very famous Latino director, produced this movie, which I thought was really fascinating. I have no idea what the
Yeah.
connection is there, because obviously this is a filmmaker in India. This is only his second film, but I really enjoyed it. I definitely think, if you're not into music, it's probably not the great. There is a lot of music in it and a lot of Indian classical music, so which
Hmm.
I actually really like. So, and I was
Yeah.
fascinated to hear more and learn more about it and all the divisions within it. Um, and then I'm really curious, Brian, to know what you thought of the very last scene in the movie without giving too much away.
Mm.
I found it really interesting.
Yeah, I liked that. Gosh, how do
How do you
I
get
say?
into it without
Yeah,
discussing it? It
yeah.
leaves you thinking, doesn't it? I mean, it really
Yes,
left me. I mean, I watched this with my husband and we were talking about it for quite a while afterwards. And I think,
yeah.
you know,
You know you have a good movie when you keep thinking about it day after day. You know that
yeah,
it just doesn't kind of float into the ether of a movie I saw. You know this one does make you think, and some of those other things that I was thinking about. You touched on, with musicians. What is talent? What is raw talent? What is practicing? Here in the U.S. we talk about the 10,000 hours, or there's so much of like people are either born to sing or not, and then people argue against that, and it kind of goes into that in a more subtle way, though, in a different culture's kind of viewpoint, which I really
hmm
liked. And again, I kept coming back and thinking about those things in that film throughout the week, after I watched it, at least. So
yeah. And I think it was interesting because he's not mediocre and he's not talented, right? He has
yeah,
talent. It's just that
yeah,
he's not rising to that level for the amount of work he's putting into it. He's
yeah,
not. And I think ultimately one of the things you see in it, and this is where the film becomes also about happiness and, what is your life's purpose, is he doesn't really seem to be enjoying himself, and that's really what
mm-hmm,
it comes down to is, if you want to spend 5 hours a day practicing and that's what you just love to do and it makes your heart sing, regardless of maybe how actually talented you are, I think that's one thing. But to be pushing yourself like that and also not getting
yeah,
much out of it is a whole other thing. So yeah, there was just a lot going on in this movie, a lot to explore. So, and like you mentioned, I also really loved the photography and
oh,
kind of the codas they
beautiful.
put in with him on the motorcycle at the very
Mm-hmm.
beginning. And then we go fast forward 10 years, and here he is again on the motorcycle doing
Yeah,
that same on apparently the same stretch of road. So that was very interesting to me. So
yeah, that
yeah,
jumped through me for a second because I was like, "Whoa, we're really far ahead in time."
Yeah, he had a
It
little
was it
belly
was
and a
so
mustache.
quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, and then one of the gals that was kind of with him, I was like, "Is that her? Oh yeah, I think that's her. I think it was her, right?" And
The one that was at the beginning of the film that was also a student of his mentor.
yeah, wasn't she also doesn't? Is that who jumped and?
I don't think that was the same person, but we had
Okay.
confusion
See, I
about
was
that as
super
well. Yeah.
confused. Yeah.
Yeah. That we had a little confusion about that too. So yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely think
Yeah.
that's fair. Okay. Well, so recommendation from both of us. How many stars would you give it, Brian?
I gave it 3.5.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah.
And I gave it three, probably three, like overall, but then the cinematography gave it that extra half because it is so
Okay.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's great. Okay. So I think on to the next one for you.
All right, yeah, this is my film, and it's Tokyo Drifter. It was made in 1966 by director Senju Suzuki, I believe. And I actually picked this movie for us to watch just on the still shot on the Criterion catalog. Just
Oh,
looked at that still shot, didn't know anything about it, and said, "I really want to watch this movie," and I'm really glad that we picked it up because it's about a kind of a, this is the official synopsis, is after a yakuza boss Kurata dissolves his own criminal empire, a rival kingpin offers position to his top operative, the Phoenix Tetsu. uh, uh, but he's very loyal, he declines, and then he sends another hitman to kill him, and then he kind of feels like maybe he's being betrayed by somebody else. And my version is, what would happen if you make a Yakuza movie with no budget, 30 cups of coffee, and a handful of magic mushrooms? And that's what you would get with this movie because it is bonkers in the
yeah.
best ways possible. I really loved it. So the studio didn't give him any budget. They give him the minimum amount of budget to make a film. And at that time in Japan, so he was like, okay, how can I make this interesting? I don't want to make it a typical movie. I'm going to use minimal sets because we don't have the budget to even build them all the way complete. So I'm just going to use bold colors, and bold colors is an understatement of the year.
Hmm.
There's it's jarring. The cuts are just, talk about time jumps. I mean, it's one scene he's goes in a room with another character, and the next scene he woke up who knows how many days later, and it's all over the
Yeah.
place. It's just this big adrenaline rush, but it's kind of jarring, but also why I love it. So I can't wait to hear what you think about this.
Yeah, I'm so glad you picked this. It's amazingly, I've never seen it before. I've kind of decided that the 1950s and 60s for Japan might be the best period of filmmaking ever,
Mm,
anywhere, in any
wow.
country. I mean, definitely to rival America in the 30s or, some
Yeah.
other countries at their peak time because, Brian Michael and I've reviewed tons of Japanese films from this period, and every single one is just, I mean, we rarely see one that disappoints. And here's another director, Suzuki, who's was so outrageous even by the standards of Japanese cinema that he had problems with the studio.
Yeah.
Tokyo Drifter is crazy. It is a gangster movie sort of, but it's so stylized. The mise en scene is so stylized, as you mentioned. You
Yeah.
have scenes that are in black and white. You have
Hmm.
scenes. It looks like he's using different types of film stock. I felt like some of it was grainier than others, and some of it looked really clear. You have these
Hmm.
crazy bold color palettes. The choices of music, the way the characters act, the jump cuts, as you mentioned, sometimes
Hmm.
freeze frames, sometimes we're seeing like split screen. I mean, he's using, and I think if you saw that in some films, you might think, oh, it's just all style. It's just, but it all works weirdly
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
style, for the just as kind of the Yakuza genre, but it really works. You have the
Yeah.
main character, everyone's scared of him, but he doesn't look tough at all. He's just like
Right.
this regular
He
looking
looks like the
guy. He's
biggest
very small.
wimp ever.
Yeah, he's really kind of a small guy. He's not, and somehow everyone when he walks in the room is like, oh, and that makes it
Dodge
just
bullets and never,
right, right. He does get shot, but he always
Yeah.
recovers, and it
Yeah.
has these typical Yakuza themes of like loyalty and respect, because he has this
Yeah.
boss that he's really doing this all for, and then there's betrayal. But the story is really whatever, it's I was reading online that he influenced directors ranging from Tarantino to Jim Jarmusch to
Hmm.
Wong Kar-wai, and you can see all of
Oh
that.
yeah.
I mean, you can see it, the
Absolutely.
color palettes with Wong Kar-wai, just the craziness with Tarantino, like the crazy
Hmm.
action sequences, and then the cool kind of like we're too cool hipster thing with Jarmusch. So I could see all of that in there.
Yeah.
I mean, he was really breaking ground in 66 and not
Yeah.
even, it was ahead of its time. I mean, now people would watch it and be like, this is awesome. But I could imagine at the time people are just like watching, going,
Oh, the
what is
studio
this?
hated it. The
Yeah.
own studio, they're like, we wanted to feature. I don't know if he's an up and coming, but they wanted to feature this lead actor, and they're like, that didn't do it. Which he was great. Of course, it did it. He acted in over 100 films, so it must have done something for him.
Right.
But yeah, they were panning. They were like panning. They're like, it doesn't make sense because it is. It's so weird, and yeah, it has these weird musical interludes
Oh,
out of
I forgot to
nowhere.
mention the musical interludes too.
Yeah,
Yeah. It is
again,
sort
like
of a
you.
musical too. The girlfriend comes out. It's sort of like an
Yeah,
old 30s movie. She comes out, there's a
right.
piano player, It's empty. There's no people in this bar, but the piano player
Yep.
comes out and she starts singing, like the old 30s, 40s
Right.
movies. I was expecting all of a sudden, like, Dietrich or Garbo to show up or something. I mean, it was
Yeah.
so great.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. It shouldn't work. It shouldn't work at all, but it does perfectly. It's funny. There's very Western moments too. I felt like a lot of the Westerns probably were inspired by this, or vice versa. And he said that he wasn't. He's like, there's no way I was influenced by Westerns, but there's some scenes that are so like that. And the main character, this I love. He has his own kind of theme song. So every time he comes in, there this song
The
would start.
themes.
That's
Mhm.
very Westerny. But then
Oh, yeah.
then he just starts singing it. He said, like, when have you ever seen a character start singing
Yeah.
or whistling his own theme song? So it's kind of like a clever way to break the fourth wall.
Right. It's like Clint
I've never
Eastwood with
seen
the man.
anything
It's
like
like it
it.
was if Clint Eastwood came out as the man with no name, and he always had the theme song when he came out, but he started singing it too. You'd be like, "What is happening in this
Yeah,
movie?" That's what this was like. Yeah.
exactly. It's
It's
so
so
wild.
yeah, and the scene that also reminded me of a Western is that scene towards the end with the bad guy where they're kind of in the empty town. I mean, it seems empty, but they're
Yeah,
they're everyone's shooting, and that totally seemed like a Western. So yeah,
yeah,
if he
yeah.
had never seen one before, then he somehow
Well, he said he was a big fan, but of westerns, but he didn't. But he wasn't
feel like
influenced by them in this film. So it was a very
yeah, well, he
interesting
wants to take
take.
credit. He wants to get credit. He doesn't want people to think he stole from anything. And,
Yeah.
in a way, he did. I mean, even if he did steal, it's so innovative on its own. It doesn't seem,
Yeah.
because
Oh,
sometimes with
yeah.
Tarantino, I'm watching and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's from that film and this is from this film. It's not
Sure.
like I was thinking of one film. He's blending everything up so much that and plus you're so confused from moment to moment because there's so many genres going on in one
Yeah.
movie that yeah, and I'm really excited to see more Suzuki films. So if you ever want to come
Yeah.
back and review some of his other ones, because Branded
Oh,
to Kill,
cool.
I think, is his most
That's
famous
the
film.
exact one, yeah, that I want to see next. I will be seeing
Yeah.
it this week.
Oh, you are
Well, yeah, I have to. I can't wait to see. And a
more.
friend of
Yeah.
mine was like, "Oh, if you like that, you should check out Branded to Kill."
Yeah, and they've
So,
got a bunch of his films on the Criterion Channel and on Criterion
yeah,
Collection. So I'm anxious to check out more. I want to see Branded to Kill, and then there's a few others. Just from the names, I thought, oh, well,
yeah,
he has really interesting names to his movies. So
yeah.
very exciting. So new
Cool.
discovery, new director to check out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I gave this one 4 stars. I don't know where are you at on that
Yeah,
one.
4 stars on this one.
Yeah, it's too wild.
I could
I
own it.
could,
I could own it easily and not get sick of it. So that's always
yeah,
a good
yeah.
sign
I
for a
know.
4 star movie.
I immediately want to watch it again. The second it was
Yeah.
over, I was like, I don't have time, but I really just want to watch this again because then you kind of know what to expect, so you can really see the finer details and appreciate. So, ugh, so good. All right, I better move on.
Yep.
Uh, and I'm up again, I think. In
Yep.
the next film is Memories of Murder. This was in 2009 by critically acclaimed now Bong Joon sorry, who did Parasite, who won an Oscar for that. Snowpiercer, Okja, Mother, The Host. I mean, if you don't know who he is, then check your pulse because
You
you
may be
gotta.
watching the wrong show.
Yeah, you're definitely if you're watching this and you don't know him, you're really out of touch. But it's okay. There's still time. You can check them all out, including this one. It takes place in a small Korean town in 1986. These two detectives are trying to solve a serial murder case where the murderer is killing young women, and I don't know. It's another wild movie, and how to describe it. A lot of films that this director has, they're very quirky. They're not your traditionals, especially by U.S. standards of the grizzled cop or the hard bent detective that's trying to retire but he takes on one more case. It's the opposite of that. They're wild, they're crazy, they don't make a lot of
Fairly
sense.
incompetent. Fairly
Very,
incompetent.
very incompetent. Great, yeah. His when your go-to move is when you find a new suspect is to do a jumping, flying drop kick into the character and knock him down and then grab him. When you just think maybe this guy somewhat fits the the
He
look
sort of
or the
fits into look.
location.
Yeah.
And he does that like multiple times. That's like his move is he just jumps from wherever he is and jumps and kicks this guy. It's just I love it. Again, the cinematography, the look of the film, the way it breaks these conventional roles is certainly what we're used to. It's a little more kind of why I love Korean films too. Is it's wacky and funny, and I mean it was dark, serious, funny, manic, sad at times. It was
Hmm.
everything. It made you feel so many different emotions, and you just don't get that a lot of the time. So I, again, another movie I really, really liked.
Yeah, one thing that the South Korean New Wave, as they're now calling it, or they've been
Mm,
calling it, I mean, it's been going on for, 15, 20 years, really. But
right.
that one of the things that the filmmakers in this movement do so well that I think is really hard to master. I mean, I think of very few American filmmakers, for instance, that do this, is exactly what you're talking about, blending genres in a way that is not disjointed. We see it all the time in films where it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Right.
and somehow, and Bong Joon-ho is one of the masters of that. You think about Parasite and the fact that it's kind of basically a horror movie, but it's very funny in parts, it's very dramatic,
Yeah.
it's very sad. We see it here early in his career in 2003 with Memories of a Murder, where essentially the plot could be a very typical thing we've seen in a million movies and episodes of Law and Order, right? It's a serial killer on the
Right.
loose and two police detectives trying to capture the person, but nothing goes according to plan. They have, as you mentioned, tons of comedic moments which seem really out of place but somehow work. Partially, he has to thank for that the wonderful casting of Song Kang Ho, who becomes a
Yeah.
regular in Bong Joon Ho's movies and really a regular in a bunch of.
Yeah.
They have a whole collection right now on Criterion Channel of South Korean New Wave films from a bunch of different directors, not just
Oh,
Bong Joon Ho,
cool.
and he's in a bunch of the films. And so
Yeah.
he was really, and he has this huge range. He played the father in Parasite, which is a dramatic role, but he also played these buffoons and these comedic characters,
Yeah.
big range. Like you said, the detectives are incompetent and they're also extremely violent. They torture the suspects before they really even have any clues that they did it. They just think, well, let's torture this guy and see if we can get him to admit it. And then, they never capture the right person, right?
Yeah.
And you would think it would
Including
turn
someone with special needs that really made me feel awkward and
uncomfortable. Yeah.
uncomfortable big time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
which I think you're supposed to. I mean, these guys are
Yeah.
not, they're not very good at their jobs. And
Yeah.
then there's this other guy, the third guy comes in, and he's from the other city, and they keep making fun of him. Oh, you're a big time. But he's
Yeah.
actually kind of just like, well, maybe we should actually try to, investigate this. And they're
Yeah.
kind of like, shut up, you, while we torture this guy some more.
We're gonna
So
drop kick him just like we drop kicked you.
yeah, exactly. And then they have really sad moments because they show some of the
Mhm.
victims of the
Yeah.
killings, and some of it and it's and rapes, and it's really grisly, and the town is really impacted by it. Women become scared to go out at night because this is a rural area. And
Right.
and they've never and they also said, I mean, this is based on a true story. It was the first serial killers really, murders happening in Korea. So it was a
Mm.
big news case. And so to take something that was already known in the public consciousness and then to turn it into this, I must have think it was really weirdly received by the public because it was really known in the community. So yeah, it's a fantastic film. It's his second film he did after Barking Dogs Never Bite, which I just watched not too long ago,
Mm,
which is a
cool.
really weird movie, and even much weirder than this one actually. So,
Wow.
and very unpopular. His first film was
Mm.
unpopular, so then
Mm.
this one came out. This one was much more popular, so then he got a chance to make more movies. So,
Thank goodness.
um,
Yeah.
it, so if
Although
you're
it
a
makes
fan
me
of
want to see that
Parasite,
other one.
yeah, it's really weird. If you're a fan of Parasite or Bong Joon Ho, this is definitely one to check out. So,
Yeah.
4 stars
Yeah.
for me.
4 stars. Nice. I gave it 3.5. So
Okay,
just because
yeah,
it's not my favorite of his, but it's right up there for sure. Very, very
yeah.
good. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to my next pick, which is Gloria from 1980 by John Cassavetes. And I picked this because I learned that Brian Hart is a fan of John Cassavetes movies, and my regular co-host Brian Michael really dislikes Cassavetes, so I never get a chance to review his movies on the show. So when you said, Brian, I like Cassavetes, I was like, ooh. And I
Yeah.
just watched Gloria recently on Criterion Channel, so I was excited to have someone to talk to it about it. It's about a gangster's girlfriend played by the marvelous Gina Rowlands, who goes on the run with her neighbor's kid after the kid's entire family is murdered in front of him. And the film opens with that, by the way. So, not your typical Hollywood movie. This was the biggest budget Cassavetes ever had to work with, unlike his usual very low budget movies. And it
Mhm.
shows he's all over New York with this while they're on the run. Um, the thing that I want to mention, because I know we don't have a lot of time, unfortunately, to talk about this one, couple things. The opening sequence with the artwork on the walls is one of my favorite opening sequences almost in any movie. I just think it's
Mm.
fantastic. But then Gina Rowlands in this movie, what a tour de force performance. There's a reason this
Holy
movie has
moly.
been remade 3 times, including with a remake with Sharon Stone in the lead role, which I never want to see because I just can't even imagine it.
Yeah.
She has so many great lines in this movie. Her character is tough. tough as nails. She's wacky and she's tough as nails, but she's also protecting this kid, and she doesn't even really know why. She doesn't even really like
Yeah,
kids,
she
but
doesn't
she's
like
just
kids at
like,
all.
no, but she just feels compelled to like keep protecting this poor kid. At
Yeah,
this one point, my favorite sequence is when they're on the subway and the bad guys come in and they start to come after her, and she pulls out her gun on them and she says, "Go ahead, try me. You'll love it. You'll love
yeah.
it." And she's already
That's
shot a
also
couple
I
people
have
by
that
that. And I
line
was like,
down.
oh my God. I wrote it down because I was like, and then the other
Yeah,
scene is when she goes into the restaurant to the bad guys and she walks up behind the gangster and she says, "My name's Gloria. I've got my gun in my hand. I want to make a deal." She's just like, so many great lines in this movie. I'm excited to hear what you thought.
yeah. She's amazing. That her character, unbelievable, so good. Yeah, she's fearless. She was a gangster, yeah, but now she's helping this little guy, which kind of seems like a metaphor for Cassavetes a little bit. He acted in a lot of bigger Hollywood films, but his true passion, some of them he didn't like, maybe most of them, but he liked to do these smaller independents, even though this is the bigger one. So it's kind of I felt like he was kind of. It was almost him, but holding the gun in Hollywood or
Right.
whatever. Like, do it. I love it. You're gonna love
Come
it.
on. You'll
Try
love it. You'll
me.
love it.
Yeah, just so good. A little the relationship with the kid was super interesting. A little weird at times for me. Borderline inappropriate. Like there was a scene in the beginning, and I was like, what are they doing there? But then it kind of levels out, and it's interesting. His dialogue is also very grown up for a kid. It was obvious that someone wrote him, but again, it started working at the end, and the kid's great. Like his look, his style, it's so
He's tough.
bizarre
He's
and
a tough
different.
kid. I mean, he had
Tough
his
kid,
entire,
super
yeah,
tough.
super tough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
I love
interesting.
this movie. I just rewatched it for the show.
Oh,
Because I
cool.
watched it a few months ago. And so for me, it's a 4-star film, but I could see not
Oh,
everyone would
cool.
feel that way.
Sure.
So what are you
Yeah.
giving it?
I'm giving it a 3,
Okay.
and that's
What's
I
your
love
favorite Cassavetes?
Cassavetes. It's not my favorite. Still Faces, which is super gritty and low budget and dark,
Mm.
is still my favorite one. But definitely worth checking out if you like Cassavetes, and if you don't like traditional gangster films, check it out for sure.
And I would think if you don't like usual Cassavetes films, this might be the one to start with because it's
Yeah,
not as
for yeah,
slow and talky as this one.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Going into Faces first off would be probably
tough.
hard for a lot
Yeah,
of
unless
people.
you're a real snob, and then go for it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, thank you, Brian. We're out of time. It was so much
yeah. Thank you
fun. We
so
had some
much.
great, great picks. I'm really excited that we got to
Yeah,
review these. As always, check out our website at realfilmsnobs.com. You can check us out on Facebook and Twitter. I'd like to thank our fantastic crew and Brad Wortman in particular, our sponsors, our fabulous guest host, Brian Hart.
thanks for
We're on
having me.
CC, yeah, we're on CC Media, Scan TV in Silverton, Corvallis Access Media, KMUZ, and KMWV Radio. Have a great day and great movies. Bye.